Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, the Green Party strongly opposes the policy basis for this bill because it undermines local democracy and it deprives councils of significant and important revenue from development contributions, and it will compromise their ability to fund and provide basic community facilities. And we don't regard libraries, sports centres, swimming pools as nice-to-haves. We regard them as part of a civilised city, civilised town, and something that the community benefits from. Mr Chair, this whole bill encapsulates National's lack of respect for local government. It continues the approach that National adopted with the 2012 amendments to the Local Government Act, where it's centralising power, it's giving more power to ministers to override local government, and it's constraining local government with a whole raft of requirements that don't apply to our central government agencies. The Green Party believes that its citizens' ability to elect local representatives and for them to make decisions about local matters, that is a fundamental democratic right, and that this bill, like so much of National's meddling with local government, actually overrides those rights and shows quite a lot of contempt for them. And Mr Chair, National's saying that this bill is part of its Better Local Government program. But we can't see how it's promoting better local government if you're weakening the democratic base of councils, weakening their capacity to represent their local community, and increasing the regulatory burden on them. Because this bill, Mr Chair, is another 128 pages of law on local government. And the Local Government Act already has grown in recent years from being about 350 pages long to 465 pages. How can it make local government better by adding another 128 pages? The government is taking away the power of local councils to make the decisions which affect their communities. And as the size of the Act increases, so does the regulatory burden and so does the cost faced by councils charged with its implementation. So that shows the shallowness of the government's efficiency agenda. And as the Green Party has said before, it would be so much better if the Minister and the Department of Internal Affairs worked with Local Government New Zealand, worked with councils to provide good guidance, rather than using this sledgehammer of new law to impose its wishes on councils and additional requirements on councils. And in this first call, I'd also like to talk about development contributions. The Minister is saying that development contributions will lead to more affordable housing. Well, that's quite at odds with a lot of the submissions that the Select Committee heard. The Tauranga City Council and developers associated with the City Council were opposing the changes to development contributions, opposing this restriction or very narrow definition of community infrastructure. And the Tauranga City Council said that the bill would do little, if anything, to promote the delivery of more affordable housing. Because, of course, development contributions only make up a very small portion of the cost of developing new sections and houses. The Council thought it was quite unlikely that any reductions in development contributions would actually be passed on to consumers by developers, and they only make up 4% of the total cost of a new 145 square metre house and land package in Auckland. And in Tauranga, which is another high growth area, the Council estimated that these changes might reduce the cost of a new house by $750. Mr Chair, that is chicken feed when you look at the overall cost of houses around $400,000. So the whole purpose of development contributions is to enable councils to recover from developers a fair and equitable portion of the costs of capital expenditure that are needed to cater for population growth. And they are a way of ensuring that new ratepayers pay their share of putting in new infrastructure to service them, rather than that all falling on existing ratepayers. And they help reduce the pressure on rates revenue. So it's this bit of the bill, and I'm intrigued that the Minister said that councils are supporting it, because Local Government New Zealand, in its submission, said that the development contributions aspect of the bill was the most concerning to councils because of the way in which it restricted the definition of community infrastructure to which development contributions could be levied and applied. And, Mr Chair, we think it should be councils which anticipate where growth is going to occur and what sort of facilities should be provided to cater for that growth, whether it's libraries, swimming pools, parks, museums, art galleries and the like. It's their responsibility. They are elected to represent their communities. So it's very patronising that under this government, ministers in the beehive think that they know best and they intervene to restrict the ability of councils to decide what sort of facilities should be funded through development contributions. And the changes that this bill makes are in marked contrast, Mr Chair.
The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Are in marked contrast to what's happening in the United Kingdom, where we've got a Conservative government and it recently legislated to give councils the right to levy development contributions for community infrastructure, including libraries and swimming pools, based on its view that those facilities are essential to community wellbeing, not nice to have, as the Minister says. And these sections of the clauses in the bill are going to have quite a major impact on councils' ability to fund community infrastructure. It was estimated by officials that it could have an impact of $510 to $900 million over the next 10 years. And in Christchurch, the council there estimated that it would reduce their revenue by $32 million, compounding the financial challenges that that council faces. So you have ministers in the national government railing against councils increasing their rates, yet through this bill offloading additional costs onto ratepayers because you won't have development contributions as a source of funding for new swimming pools and the like. And, Mr Chair, when you combine that with the oppressive requirements around the objection process for development contributions, where not only can property developers and others make submissions on the council policy of how development contributions should be set, but they will now have the right to object on the actual amount of those contributions for particular developments. That's going to mean that councils get very shy of investing in infrastructure that's going to be needed for future growth. And that's where developers in the Tauranga area were very critical of the bill, because that infrastructure that needs to be planned for the future needs to be invested in now so that development can occur. So what the bill could potentially do is constrain future subdivision and development, constrain the supply of land for housing by making councils wary of planning for new facilities and looking to finance those through future revenue raised through development contributions. And, Mr Chair, the bill's also really unwise because councils such as Auckland have engaged in considerable consultation with developers and others to finalise their development contributions policy, and what the bill does is cut right across that. So it's very short-sighted. It will provide a short-term gain for some land developers and property developers, but it is very short-sighted because it is not planning for the future. It's not going to accommodate and provide good facilities in new areas around Auckland, Tauranga and other centres. And it will increase rates quite substantially by reducing the ability of councils to use development contributions for some quite basic community facilities. So, Mr Chair, we'll talk in other calls on some of the other failings in the bill in terms of the way it overrides our competent councils by replacing them with local boards. But this issue around development contributions is providing for short-term needs, and it's not looking to the future, and it potentially leads to some of our new subdivisions and developments being much more like ghettos than real communities, because the facilities where communities can gather, where children can play, will be much more difficult to fund and build.
I call the honourable member Philip Twyford.
Talofa lava, Mr Chairman.
Am I on?